May peace and power and elevation be to all you beautiful people out there. This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect right here on the StreamYard. So if you are on my YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe to that channel, hit the notification bell and share. If you are on Facebook, go ahead and share this video. Please. Thank you. So today we're dealing with daily Black history, right? Today's topic, we're going to be talking about a lady named Biddy Mason. Bridget Biddy Mason, right, who was also an entrepreneur. She was a nurse and a former slave, and she was one of the founders of the African Methodist Church in Los Angeles, California. Okay, so we here today to look at her history, her background, and also commemorate her for the work that she has done. Because a lot of people don't receive a lot of credit, especially in this country called United States of America, right? Where they just take and don't give you the proper credit that you deserve for what you have created and what you have made a contribution of, and you only get a little small percentage of that. Those little contributions. Your family, if they're lucky, they could be able to own something. If not, it's all under the control of those who have oppressed you. But anyways, let's get started. So who is Bridget Biddy Mason? Let me show you what she looked like. Okay. This lady right here, her name is Bridget Biddy Mason. This is she. All right. So let's take a look at the information on this woman. Okay. So as you can see, I'm right here on this website called wikiwan.com. All right. So let's look at who she was. All right. Biddy Mason was an African-American nurse in California, real estate entrepreneur and philanthropist. She is the founder of the first African Methodist Episcopal Church in Los Angeles, California. Enslaved upon birth, she developed a variety of skills and developed knowledge of medicine, child care, and livestock care. In California, she successfully petitioned a court for her freedom. Yes, she petitioned the court for her freedom. Now, let me show you something else. Let's continue on with her early life. Biddy Mason was born into slavery on August 15 of 1818. Her exact birthplace is unknown. Different sources cited either Hancock County, Mississippi, or Hancock County, Georgia, as her birthplace. At an early age, she was taken from her parents and moved to the plantation of another slave owner. Although records during her youth are incomplete, she spent most of her time on a plantation owned by Robert Smithson. All right. And it says during her teenage years, she learned domestic and agricultural skills. Additionally, she developed skills in herbal medicine and midwifery taught to her by other female slaves. These skills were passed down from African, Caribbean, and Native American tradition. Her knowledge benefited both the slaves and the slave plantation owners. Biddy was either given to or sold to Robert Mays Smith and his bride, Rebecca Dorn Smith, in the 1840s. According to some stories, she was given to the Smiths as a wedding present. But records are not clear as to why she moved to the Smiths, Mississippi plantation. Biddy was valuable to the Smiths because of her knowledge of medicine, child care, and livestock care. While on Smith's plantation, Biddy had 3 children, Ellen in 1838, Anne in 1844, and Harriet in 1847. The father or fathers of her children are known, but some historians believe Robert Smith likely fathered at least one of her children. A 25-year-old slave named Hannah worked with Biddy on the plantation. Like Biddy, Hannah had 3 of her own children. So that's a little background story, the little backstory of Miss Biddy, right? And she was very knowledgeable in medicine, childcare, and livestock care. And she learned about being a midwife at a very young age from other former slaves. So she inherited all these skills and made them useful. All right. So, um, let's go on down real quick, right? And if you want to find out more information, all you gotta do is go down here on Wiki One, right? And then you see where it says notes. This is where you're gonna find your information at. Further reading, right here. Okay. So real quick, let's look at how she earned her freedom. Okay. Well, before we go there, let's look at relocation in 1847, 1851. All right. So missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon, proselytized in Mississippi. They taught Smith and his wife and 6 children, and they converted in 1847. Slaves were only allowed to be preached to and baptized with their master's permission, according to church policy. It is unknown whether Biddy was baptized. The Smith household joined a group of other church members from Mississippi to meet the Mormon exodus from Nauvoo, Illinois in 1847. The group traveled to Pueblo, Colorado, and joined up with the 6th detachment from the Mormon battalion during the journey west. Biddy was valuable to the wagon company. She organized travelers, herded cattle, prepared meals, and midwife while caring for her own children. They later joined the main body of Mormons, crossing the plains and settled in the Salt Lake Valley, Utah territory. Yeah, so if you go to Utah as of today, right? Especially in the city of Salt Lake, um the Mormon population is very huge out there. It's very huge out there in Utah. But then it's very funny about the Mormons. Their teaching is very strange when it comes to black people. They feel like black people are not, I guess in some sense, are not God's children. They're not really God's children. They're like underprivileged. Yeah, and they believe that there's another coming of Christ. I mean, I don't know. Their teaching is just very strange to me. I mean, I don't know any black person that wants to become a Mormon unless you really want to be subjugated to some form of prejudice and slavery. And if you're talking about slavery and prejudice, that sounds like the Mormon. Like they feel like the white people in their organization is more privileged than the blacks or any other group. But but continue. So, all right. Then it goes on to say church leader Brigham Young sent a group of Mormons to Southern California in 1851. Young instructed the group that California was a free state and their slaves would be free when they arrived in California. Smith ignored Young and chose not to free Biddy or Hannah. Robert Smith, his family, and his slave joined them in San Bernardino, California, sometime later. Biddy was among a large group of slaves in the San Bernardino settlement. As a part of compromise of 1850, California was admitted as a free state. So now you got states that were free, and you got those that weren't a free state, that were slave states. So California happened to be one of those states that was a free state, meaning that there was no form of slavery practice going on, right? And that the former slaves themselves would eventually become free people and have all the inedible rights like all the other group of people out there. And it says, and any slave who reside in the state or was born in the state was free. Biddy had lived in California for 4 years, and some of the other slaves had been born in California, so they were covered by the law. Biddy wanted to be free, but it was under the control of Robert Smith and ignorance of the law and her rights. All right. And then it goes on to talk about her freedom. Okay. In 1856, Smith decided to move to the slave state of Texas and sell his slaves there. He sold his slaves that they would be free in Texas. No, he told his slave that they would be free in Texas. But Biddy did not believe him. Biddy relayed her fears on being separated from her children and remaining a slave to two free black men. Wait a minute, she remained a slave to two free black men. She remained a slave to two free black men. Hold on. You read that right. Let's continue. Let's read that one more time. Biddy relayed her fears of being separated from her children and remaining a slave to two free black men, Charles Owens and Manuel Pepper, due to the romantic relationship they had with two of Biddy, with two of Biddy and Hannah's daughters. They were determined to help Biddy stay in California. The men, included sheriffs and others, invaded Smith's hideout in the Santa Monica Mountains and served him a court order. Biddy petitioned a Los Angeles court for her freedom. Smith claimed that Biddy was her family and she wanted to go to Texas. He then bribed her lawyer he then bribed her lawyer to not show up. She was not allowed to testify in court since California law prohibited black people from testifying against white people. Now, here it is. Hold on. California's supposed to be a free state, right? Black people are supposed to be freed. They're supposed to be freed. But you cannot testify against white people. So although California is a state of freedom and they do not practice any form of slavery, but they also hold white people as to hierarchy. They give them the privilege. So therefore, white privilege is very prevalent in California at that time, but slavery wasn't. Because it says the California law prohibited black people from testifying against white people. And it says, after Smith failed to appear in court on January 21st of 1856, the judge presiding over the case, Benjamin Ignatius Hayes, freed Biddy and her family members. In 1860, Mason received a certified copy of the document that guaranteed her freedom. Biddy had no legal last name when she was enslaved. A lot of slaves didn't. A lot of slaves did not have a legal last name because they were not seen as the humans with right or privilege. They were seen as underprivileged. They were seen as properties. So when you're looked at as a property, you're not valued in such a way, or you're not equal to everyone else. Because even though you have human attributes, right? You are a human being, but in the eyes of those who are oppressing you and that's the master over you, you're not a human. You're a property first. So no, she had no legal last name at that time because she was a property. Okay, so all right, so let's go ahead look up more information about her. This is interesting. She moved to Los Angeles. After becoming Freemason and her daughters moved in with Robert Owens, right, the father of Charles Owens and a well-known Los Angeles businessman. Her daughter Ellen would eventually marry Charles Owens. Mason worked in Los Angeles as a nurse and midwife, delivering hundreds of babies during her career. Using her knowledge of herbal remedies, she risked her life to care for those affected by the smallpox epidemic in Los Angeles. One of her employees was the noted physician John Strother Griffin. Saving carefully, she was one of the first African American women to own land in Los Angeles. As a businesswoman, she amassed a relatively large fortune of nearly $300,000. Now, that's a lot of damn money. She inherited a lot of money because remember, $300,000 was a lot of money at that time, which she shared generously with charities. Mason also fed and sheltered the poor and visit prisoners. She was instrumental in founding a travelers aid center, a school and daycare center for Black children, open to any child who had nowhere else to go. Because of her kind and giving spirit, many call her Auntie Mason or Grandma Mason. And that's what we do in our community. When you got that one lady on the block, right, that's always giving, that's always compassionate, that's always reaching out to people, she's considered as grandma. She considered as auntie. She might be considered as mama because of her compassionate and her love for the people in her community. She's always going to be regarded and respected. And it says 1872, along with her son-in-law, Charles Owens, Mason was a founding member of the First African Methodist Episcopal Church of Los Angeles, the city's first Black church. The organizing meetings were held in her home on Spring Street. She donated the land on which the church was built. She also helped to establish the first elementary school for Black children in Los Angeles. Mason spoke fluent Spanish and was a well-known figure in the city. She dined on occasion at the home of Pio Pico, the last governor of Alta California and a wealthy Los Angeles landowner. All right. So Alta California is Upper California. Okay. So that's interesting enough. Again, if you want to look up that information, you can go on WikiOne, and you can always look at the bottom right here. Okay, so just look at the bottom, and you'll find out some more information. Further reading. Okay, so let's see what else we can find. Also, another suggestion, right? Let's see. You can also find some more information on National Park Services. This is the website right here. Okay, so then it goes on to say, Bridget Biddy Mason died in LA on January 15, 1891. She was buried in an unmarked grave in Evergreen Cemetery on March the 27, 1988. The mayor of LA and members of the church she founded held a ceremony during her grave was marked with a tombstone. Bridget Biddy Mason is associated with the historic resources associated with African Americans in Los Angeles multi-property submission. It was approved and listed on the National Register of Historic Place on March 17th, 2009. All right. And that came from the website of National Park Services. Okay. Right here. So you can find out that information. Uh so she had an unmarked grave site. So what does that mean? When she passed away, why was her grave site unmarked? Was it because the family could not afford to give her a tombstone? Or was it because of the heavy racial prejudice that was taking place? What was it? And this is just out of curiosity for me. You know, this woman was an entrepreneur. She founded churches. She was a nurse. Why nobody ever gave her a gravestone or a tombstone at that to mark the territory so people would know where she was buried? And how often does this woman's legacy, or how often is her legacy honored in LA? How often do they talk about her in LA? Okay. Let's see what else we can find out about Miss Biddy. Let's see, what else can we find out about her? All right. So we on California. I'm on this website, right? It's called Biddy Masons, Los Angeles, 1856 to 1891 by Dolores Hayden. Okay, now it says right here. Let's look at this part. It says, when Biddy Mason arrived in California in 1851, the city of Los Angeles housed about 1,600 people, half of them under 20 years old. About a dozen were black. Some accounts portray Los Angeles just after mid-century as a tough cow town, a violent place with 62 saloons by 1872, and a bad record for rough justice, shooting, lynching, tearing, and feathering. Yet by the 1880s, it was a place that increasingly attracted immigrants who wanted to settle down as a homeowners and church-going Protestants. And by the 1890s, Los Angeles was a city over 50,000, including more than 1,200 blacks, with a thriving oil field, a growing financial center, and expanding industries. In most accounts of these decades, one reads of railroads and land booms, of white male Anglo immigrants from, and that's her again right here, from the East and the Midwest, created a new urban prosperity. There were other pioneers, including men and women of color, and this essay traced urban life as created, experienced by Biddy Mason and people like her between 1856 and 1891. She changed Los Angeles as she became one of its leading citizens. At the time, at the same time, the city changed around her, achieving urbanity, diversity, density earlier residents had barely imagined. While Biddy Mason's own records owns while Biddy Mason's own recorded words are few, legal history, medical history, and the history of the built environment can give glimpse of the urban world Biddy Mason struggled to create. So she helped to build Los Angeles. She made Los Angeles So pretty much over a period of time, Los Angeles was the black town, if you want to speak. You know, it was the black woman that made Los Angeles what it is. If it wasn't for her, I don't think that LA will be as prosperous as it is today. So LA went from being a small town, a little cow town, little small city, to being a large city, a very popular city, known for its extravagant lifestyles, right? Known for its cinemas, known for Hollywood dreams, known for the where celebrities go and hang out on Melrose, go shopping at. LA has grown, right? But it was that woman that made it possible, that saw potential in the city. She might well have been the mayor of LA, if you say, in my opinion. She might as well. She might well have had some type of LA might as well have been hers, but it wasn't. Okay. A young country girl from Mississippi that was a former slave. But if you want to look up more information, as a matter of fact, oh, look at this right here. This is the women of the Owens and Masons family on the porch of the Owens house in Los Angeles, early 1870s, right here. Mm-hmm. So, and let's see what other information we can find. All right, black midwives with their medical bags, early 1930s, Penn School, Fort Morgue, South Carolina. Hmm. And then this is a picture of her resident right here. Her residency. And it says Los Angeles, Spring Street, looking south from the 3rd Street, 1900. Biddy Mason's building is at lower right center. 2 stories high on this side of the now Pease furniture. All right, this is the same block picture, City of Los Angeles, lithograph, 1871. Okay. So I'm not gonna read all of this, but I just want to show you guys where you can find out more information. Here we go, right here. This is Biddy Mason, right? Los Angeles, 1856 to 1891 by Dolores Hayden, right? And scroll on down. All right, so and it gives information about the author, Dolores Hayden, author of 7 American Utopias, The Architecture of Communication Socialism. Yep. And it was written, this article was written in the fall of 1989. And it goes into California history. All right. Okay, so what else can we find? All right, so This website comes from Negro History Bulletin. Okay. And let's read some of the information right here. It says to start off, it gives an account of all the black women in history, right? So this article is called African American Women on the Western Frontier, written by Robert D. Holloway, Negro History Bulletin on January to March of 1997, volume 60, number 1. All right. Okay. So it gives an account of history about the African American women on the Western Hemisphere of the United States and what they have done, their contribution, and their historical background, family, and careers, etc. So, and right here it says another African American woman traveled with Mormons to Utah, led a life almost totally different from that of James. This woman originally only, this woman known originally only as Bridget was born the same year as James, 1818. But Bridget was born a slave in Mississippi, and she went to Utah in 1848 with her master, Robert Smith, who had converted to Mormonism. Smith took Bridget and several other slaves to California in 1851, where another Mormon community was being established at St. Bernardo. Okay. And then right here, it says, although California had entered the Union in 1850 as a free state, several slave owners took their human chattels to the state, apparently assuming that the law would not be enforced. Unfortunately, this was often the case. And Bridget and several other blacks, include some of her children, labored in involuntary servitude for Smith in California for 5 years. In 1856, Smith decided to move to Texas, where his status as a slaveholder would be more secure at this point. However, Bridget and the law intervened and thwarted his plan. So it then goes on to say, with the help of some African American and Caucasian friends, Bridget sued for her freedom and that of Robert Smith's other slaves in a landmark case. The judge agreed with the black plaintiffs, and Bridget became a free woman. She adopted the last name Mason and was known throughout the remainder of her life as Biddy Mason. Biddy apparently being a diminutive version of Bridget. Okay. And so then you can see more information right here in this paragraph. All right. There we go. So hold on. How old was she? Okay, so it says here. It says she lived a wealthy life. It says right here, it says she was a slave for the first 37.5 years of her life, remained unpretentious. As she grew wealthy, she lived a rather simple and basic existence until her death in 1891 at the age of 72. Her descendants, however, parlayed her small fortune into a much larger one, and became members of Los Angeles Black elite community in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Wow. So, anyways, that's some information. If you want to learn more about the African American women on the Western Frontier, you can just check this out, and you can go on jaster.org. And the name of this is Association for the Study of African American Life and History. So there you go. Okay. And that was written in 1997. And also right here, it's called, this is the PDF in one of my archives. It's called The African American Experience, A History of Black Americans from 1619 to 1890. All right. Professor Quinter Taylor, Department of History, University of Washington. All right. And this was in fall of 2000. All right. So let's see. All right. Check this out right here. It goes in Biddy Mason and Slavery and Freedom. Okay. Now, some accounts say that she was born in Georgia, uh, but other accounts say Mississippi. All right. It says she became one of the first settlers of Los Angeles when the city had less than 1,000 inhabitants. Here is a partial account of the freedom she found in the far west. So, right here, it starts off, nothing is left of the original homestead of Biddy Mason, the first black woman to own property in LA or Los Angeles. In its place at 3031 South Spring Street is the new Broadway Spring Center, primarily a parking structure, right? But this is no ordinary parking garage. 10-story tall, the Broadway Spring Center is a rather graceful pink and green building with a Tony sheet. What's it? I guess is a Tony sheet basement. Hold on. Okay. With a Tony sheet base relief uh on the front facade. The ground floor will be divided into shops with access to the small Trequill Park that has been named after Mason and which provides a green, well planted walk walkway between Broadway and Spring Street. Two public art pieces, one by Sheila Lavrant de Betterville, the other by Betty Sar, have recently been installed here. And as part of the same project, a fine art book has been printed by artist Susie E. King, all to honor Mason and the site where her home once stood. So now that area where her house was at one point in time is now a parking garage, according to this article. So they turned it into a parking garage, and also a shopping center to where people can go shop and hang out and stuff like that. So yeah. So and then it goes on to say more than a mile away, close to the USC campus, an old church that Mason founded still exists. The first African Methodist Episcopal. I'm trying to see if I can. How can I zoom this? All right. Anyways, yeah, the first African Methodist Episcopal Church of Los Angeles, 118 years old, is a testament to the complexity of Mason's life, work, and impact on the city. Many Black leaders in the community worship there. The dynamic Reverend Cecil L. Chip Murray offer sermons with titles such as "You Can't Beat the House," while a conga drum and electric guitar and clapping hands set a background for gospel rocking songs that bring people to their feet and infuse the room with sudden, irresistible energy, the energy of hope and belief and love. Okay. So Then it says there's a very large um, mural at the front of the church lit with a gold light that also bathes the people. A history is pictured there: pyramids, Africa, slavery, migration, rows of crops, and workers. Presiding over everything is the great motherly figure of Biddy Mason, Grandma Macy. She tending a flock of sheep, and she appears dignified and strong. Biddy Mason bought her land and built her house in 1886 in a town then so raw and new that the streets were troughs of mud or dust. Gas lamps were individually lit one by one every night by a rider on horseback, illuminate a scant few blocks of humble houses in the bottom of a dark sloping basin, now the valley of a billion lights. All right. So, again, the title of this called The African American Experience, a history of Black Americans from 1619 to 1890. And again, it was written by Professor Quintar Taylor, Department of History, University of Washington, fall of 2000. Okay. So there's a table of contents right here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this person was the person that's the author of this article here. He was a professor, so he was giving like a lecture every two weekly on about different people, and you know predominantly those who were enslaved and African descendant, and giving the accounts of the events and history that took place and whatnot. So it's always good to look up article information that will help. So there it goes right there. Again, I'm gonna show it one more time. All right. Okay. So it's always good to look up articles and information to verify the source and historical backgrounds and things of that nature. I always like to do that. I always like to make sure that I have verifiable information, solid and concrete information, because I'm not good at romanticizing stuff, and I'm not going to try to romanticize something that I don't know. All right, I can't do that. There's enough romanticism going on, and it's not enough decent scholarship to validate that. I mean, people can always take and mix information up just to make it sound good, but I'm not one of them. All right. But anyways, when we deal with the next time, if anybody visits Los Angeles, right? Instead of just going to Hollywood and going down to Melrose, let's look at the history of the African American community before and who made these community become prosperous, or these community being where they are today. You always want to look back at the origin and the history of things. So, and we'll find out that a lot of people that put into the work in the states in the West were those particularly from the South. Just like those who migrated up north, right? What do you think the Harlem Renaissance was? It was primary people from the South making their migration making their migration up north in the Midwest region. Same way with the West, it was people migrating from the South. So the people from the South brought their tradition, brought their ideology, brought the principle, their creativity to help grow these cities and expand them out. And Biddy Mason was one of those people that was from the South, was a former slave, had all the skills, and brought it to a group of people who were, brought it to a city that was small, a town that had less than 1,000 population, and help it to grow into the town it is today. She did that. She made it possible. She was able to teach other, care for people, open up facilities, right? Open up a place of worship, open up businesses. Again, this is an unsung hero. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in and watching. This is your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect. And if you want to go ahead and share this video, you are more than welcome to do so. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. It's Tiffany French. That's my YouTube channel, Tiffany French. Subscribe to that channel and hit the notification bell. Share the channel, like the channel, do all that good stuff. All right. Until then, please be safe out there, and I will reconnect with you guys later. All right. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. Thank y'all for watching. Deuces. All righty.